Hey everyone, good evening. I'm audible. Let me know in the chat box if I'm audible or not. Cool then. Okay, great. So I am audible. Let's begin this session. So today we'll be talking about how do you start your coding journey. And before that, I'll just give my brief introduction that I am currently working with Amazon. I have interned with Microsoft in the past, and I will be joining Google in coming a couple of months. So I also started my coding journey. I remember in my second year of college. Before that, I didn't know anything. So we'll be covering about how to go from zero to then going and working as a software developer engineer in these companies. So if you are a complete beginner, no issues. We'll be covering everything you need to know in this video, right? Great then. So before that, I'll just let you know that see basically why do you have to learn programming is simple. What is programming is basically when you interact with humans, you interact in a normal language like English, Hindi, or you speak your regional languages, right? Whereas when you interact with computers, you need to know something. You need to know how do you interact. How the computer doesn't really understand plain English, right? You cannot say or you cannot tell a computer that okay, do me this. Let's say, for example, you want to write um, a paragraph, so or you want to basically let's say you want to open Google Docs, any of this you cannot really say okay do this for me and computer won't be able to understand that, right? We can do that in nowadays using a machine learning algorithm like we have Alexa, we have Google Assistant, which they can understand certain things that we say. But again, these are all possible because of programming. Everything which includes machine learning, anything you do on your computers has to have some programming logic, right? So to interact with computer, to know or to basically instruct computer to do certain things, we require programming. So when you begin with your programming journey, the first step and the very basic step to is to choose the right programming language. So when you if you have talked to anyone or if you have tried to Google how do you start and where do you start from, so you must have encountered that there are various choices available. So first choice can be which you might have encountered is you start with C, right? You start with C++ or C. This is one of the most famous programming language among college students. The other choice can be Java because Java in general is very famous programming language, and it is used industry wise as well, industry wide, right? So uh, other programming languages includes Python, Golang, JavaScript, Ruby on Rails. You have PHP. You have again there can be multiple. I think there are more than 300, 400, or even 1,000 programming languages exist. So you have to choose wisely. What do you want to start with, right? So I would suggest if you are a complete beginner and you want to start with some programming language, I would personally suggest you start with C++ or Java. Because what happens is when you learn C++, there are a few concepts which only exist in C and C++ and not in other programming languages. And you are expected to know that concepts, right? So if you're a complete beginner, my personal choice would be C++, but the other option which I can also or suggest you is Java. Start with Java because Java is used industry wide. So whether in future you want to have a job in software or IT sector, then Java will be something that will you will encounter during that procedure, right? So you will be expected to know at least basics of Java. So either you start with C++ or Java. Again, if you're a complete beginner, personal choice which I would suggest is C++. Cool. Then um, once you have chosen your programming language, then I would suggest you learn the basic concepts. So there are a few basic concepts that you need to know. So the basic syntax which you need to learn. So basic syntax may it will cover everything from how do you declare variables, how do you use arrays, how do you declare a function, what are functions. So anything which is related to fundamentals of programming that you should learn in your initial step. That is the step one. So choose a programming language and start learning that. So resources for that are you can nowadays everything is available on YouTube. So you can just Google or you can search on YouTube C++ course, right? So you will get a playlist with all the fundamentals covered in that. So I don't think, apart from any other source, apart from YouTube, I don't think there is any other source required, because you will just need fundamentals. You don't need to master that programming language. You have to just know how do you write a basic program in that. And then when you practice on the way, like on the journey, when you practice more and more, when you write more programs, the fundamentals will, you will visit them again. So you don't need to actually master them in the beginning. You just need to know how do you write a certain program, right? So the first step is choose a programming language and begin with that. Don't worry about what other topics to be covered. So just search on YouTube and you can definitely find a good playlist for that. So once you are done with choosing a programming language, and once you are done with going through the fundamentals of it, then the second step, which is very important, so even I have highlighted in this slide, is that you start with DSA. So what is DSA? DSA is data structures and algorithms. So before doing anything in programming, I would suggest everyone to follow this, that please focus on DSA, because DSA is like the core of anything you do in computers. Anything which computers will do, or any set of program you use nowadays, has to have some logic, and that logic is based on these data structures, right? So you have to start with DSA, and your focus should be on improving problem solving skills. So what does, let's say for example, if we take an application or a software, let's say WhatsApp, what is the focus of WhatsApp? What does it solve? What problem existed which WhatsApp solved? Anyone who can tell in chat box? I would love to see the answers in the chat box. So what is the problem that WhatsApp solved for us? Any answers? Anyone? Okay, so someone has written encrypted communication. And okay, so basically, see, there was a problem that existed in this world, that before WhatsApp communication, if you had to basically message someone, right, you had to pay a lot of money. Even I remember, let's say 10 years ago, when the internet was not in that much internet was not that easily available, we had to send SMS, right? And SMS used to cost somewhere around 1.5 rupees per SMS. That used to be the cost. After internet, we sent thousands of messages daily using WhatsApp, right? And even just not messages, we can send multimedia, we can send images, we can send audio, we can send videos through WhatsApp. So there existed a problem which WhatsApp solved for us, right? So that is what problem it solved. Similarly, you will encounter when the main purpose of programming or coding, or any the main purpose of using a computer, is basically to solve problems which exist in the world, right? So focus should be how do you solve a particular problem, and that you should learn via DSA. So in data structures and algorithms, you learn how do you solve problems using programming, using computer programs. So that is very important that you focus on that, because even if your last aim is to get a software IT or software engineer job, then what will happen is, they any company you join, they will be solving some of the problems that exist in the world. For example, let's say WhatsApp, right? Let's say Facebook. For say Facebook is a social media platform, they are solving that problem which existed, that people could not socialize. um, let's say if I'm sitting in India, I could not um, socialize with my friend which is sitting in USA. That is a problem which Facebook solved for me, right? So there are various companies which are solving different problems in different domains. And anyone who would like to hire you, or anyone, anything you want to do with software engineer job or any IT job, will be focused on what problem or how good are you able to solve a problem. So that is it. You start with DSA, you start learning and start improving your problem solving skills. So that is a very fundamental of programming, that you should know how do you solve problems using coding or using programming. right? So that is your step 2. So let's take a few questions from the chat box. Okay, so there is a question which says, if I were to start now, how will I start practicing DSA? So see, what I would suggest is, there is a roadmap video which again was made, I think, a couple of months back on the same channel. You can visit that. I have discussed in detail what topics do you need to do in DSA and how do you do that. But just to give you a brief, I would suggest that you start, let's say, learning the basic DSA. So basic DSA involves arrays, strings, hash maps, linked list. You start with that, and then because there are a lot of platforms, then you start solving problems based on that. So you start practicing from Geeks for Geeks, you start practicing from Lead Code, and just do that regularly, because DSA is something that it is difficult in the initial steps. So in the beginning you might want to leave it because it is difficult. I will say that I can say that because um, in the initial, let's say, a couple of months, you might feel that you are not learning or you are not able to, DSA is not made for you. This is the mentality that you might get into. So I would suggest, when you feel that, you should uh, do not forget that anything you learn in the beginning will be difficult, right? So there is a meme in um, DSA world. So this is a meme, right? So here Harry Potter asked what happened to him. So Dumbledore tells him he tried to learn DSA, and that is why he is looking something like this. So basically, anything you learn will be difficult in the beginning, but once you pass through that learning curve, right, the steep learning curve, once you reach at a certain point, it will get better. You will get better, definitely. So it is like playing a sport, right? Initially you do not play well, you do not know how to play, but when you practice more and more, you will eventually learn it. So it is similar. So I would say, don't give up too easily and start practicing. And when you practice, make sure that anything you are learning, you should be able to retain that. Don't forget that, let's say for example, if you solved a problem today, you should be able to solve that same question after 15 days. You should not forget that. That is very important. So for that, I suggest that you make notes of whatever new tricks you are learning and revise that constantly. So even if someone asks me how did I study, I studied. I remember I have 3 or 4 notebooks where I wrote every trick I used to learn, because there are a lot of tricks you will learn initially, right? As I mentioned, there is a steep learning curve. So when you do that, when you actually go through that learning curve, you will realize that there are a lot of things which you will not remember. So make notes and revise constantly. That is one advice I would like to give you. Again, there is a famous saying, anything worth doing is going to be difficult. So DSA is something which a lot of people, I also remember in my college, I come from BITS Pilani. So there also I remember people used to tell, my friends around me used to tell me that they had been doing DSA for a while, for let's say a month or two, and they left it initially because they thought that the DSA is not made for them, or they are not made for DSA because they felt it was difficult. But one thing which they didn't realize was that there is steep learning curve. If you pass that, it will get better. It will get easier for you to solve the problems and learn better things. Okay. Let's move on to questions. So we have, what should be the level of skills exactly? Um, so see, you can have skills in various domains. Like, I'll come to that topic, that when you in your coding journey after DSA, there are various steps which, or various paths which you can take. So depending on the area which interests you more, there can be multiple things which you need to learn, right? So I'll be coming to that in a later point, in a later slide. Sorry. Okay, cool. So let's move to the next slide. Yeah. So step 3 is, again, as I mentioned, you have learned DSA. Step 3 is very simple: practice, practice, and practice. So once you have learned DSA, to get comfortable in that, the step 3, I've written it as a separate step just to focus on that. That you need to practice, practice, and practice. There is no alternate. or there is no substitute for practice when it comes to DSA, right? No one will get better at it just by going through theory. You have to practice questions. You have to solve a certain number of questions to become comfortable. If you think that, let's say, there is a person X who is very good at DSA or problem solving, he or she, that person, would have definitely practiced a lot of questions. So that there is no substitute. Again, I'm repeating that there is no substitute for practice. You have to practice regularly. You cannot skip this step, and no one can become good at DSA overnight. So again, practice is something that will make you better at anything. So this is the same case for DSA. Cool. So you have, let's say, what was it? Let me just give you a recap. So first step was to learn, choose a programming language and start learning that. So once you have learned that programming language, next step is basically you start with DSA. Right. These two are the steps which I think everyone in, who is learning coding should do. Because if you don't do these steps, let's say for example, if you directly jump onto some development stage, again, there can be multiple stages and like multiple paths which you can follow in development. So if you directly jump onto any of this development phase, one thing which you will realize later on is that you should not have skipped those two steps. Because I think a lot of people do skip that, but later on they realize that they go back there and then learn about it. So for example, let's say if you skip DSA and you directly start with development, some point in time you will definitely realize that you should not have done that, and you will go back and learn DSA. So I would recommend that you do not skip that. So step 1, 2 and 3 are again very much recommended for anyone who is starting with coding. Okay, so coming to development part. So you, after you're done with DSA, you are comfortable, let's say, with problem solving. So next step is to start with development. And when it comes to development, there can be multiple choices you need to consider. For example, the first one is you start with web development. So in web, you can basically explore front end. You can explore how does a server work, how does everything happen in the browser, and how do you make a simple application which involves some databases and which involves a server. So this is what you will learn in web. So if this is something which interests you, then you can definitely try and explore web. Other choices are basically mobile development. So if you are interested in making applications that work on mobiles, either Android or iPhone or iOS applications, you can definitely try that out. Any of the web and mobile, if you can choose any of it, it is definitely something that if you again join the industry at a later point in time, you might want, or you will encounter one of these developments. You will be encountering that you will be working in uh, these areas. Let's say you might have to write a server which interacts with a mobile application, or again, server can be same for web application as well. So again, you can choose what to learn, web or mobile. Other choices are blockchain. So nowadays it is the hot topic everywhere, that what is web 3.0, how does blockchain work, and is it going to change something. So again, you can learn about that. And resources for these are, what you can do is, you can, best resource which I can recommend is you start with YouTube. So if you're just exploring, let's say you're exploring web, then you want to explore mobile, so you start from YouTube. You don't pay anything, right? Because YouTube, all the content is free. So you start with YouTube and search the courses. So you can search how, like for example, if I search on YouTube, web development for beginners, you will find a lot of playlists. Go through them, try to see which one are you able to comfortably follow, and follow that. So this is a very, YouTube is a very good resource for starting. So web development, mobile development, blockchain. Then comes something which is machine learning and data science. Machine learning, deep learning, data science. So this is a field where you will need to learn, or there are people who say that okay, you don't need to know mathematics for learning machine learning or being a data scientist. But I would suggest, if you are good with mathematics, if you are good with um, building, let's say if this is something which interests you, machine learning, right, then what you can do is try to learn about the fundamentals of it first. Don't directly jump into the libraries which they use or libraries which you will find in a lot of courses. Try to learn from the very fundamentals, that what is the actual mathematics behind it, how are these algorithms working. So I've seen a lot of people do this mistake, that they directly start with the libraries and build some models, but the issue that they face is that they don't know how is that model working, because they didn't learn about it. So whenever you jump onto this field, you should be always, you should learn with that mindset, that any model or any third party library which you are using, you should know how are the basic algorithms working, and these algorithms or these libraries are again solving a problem for you. So for that, you will have to go back and improve your problem solving skills, right, which we discuss in step 2, that problem solving skills are can be developed, or that problem solving ability can be developed using DSA. So anything you are developing here, web development, either you do web development, mobile development, blockchain, anything, right, they will somehow solve some of the problems which exist in the world. And when you try to solve that problems, you will realize that you have to be good at problem solving skills. There will be certain scenarios which you will be encountering for the first time, which, right, for example, if you followed a course, you followed some structure which was taught in the course, you followed some content, but at a later point in time, when you start developing yourself, you will look at it, you will realize that this problem you have not encountered before, so you have to use your own mind to solve that problem. So that is why I'm focusing again, that you should definitely be a good problem solver if you are trying to learn coding. Focus on that, and then this part, this development part, will be very easy for you. So let's just take a few questions from the chat box. If you have any doubts regarding any of this field, you can let me know. I'll be taking a few questions from the chat box for now. Um, yes, so there is a question about interviews and DSA. So in India, and I think in general also, if you are giving, or if you're sitting for let's say any IT job, the most probably you will be asked DSA, because see, as an interviewer, if I am taking your interview, how will I know how good are you at problem solving? So for the method, or the way I can know that is, I can challenge you with a DSA question, and if you are able to come up with that solution, if you are able to solve that problem, I will get to know that you are okay, you are at least good with problem solving. So I think DSA is something that you should definitely know if you are planning to sit for interviews. Okay. So there is a question that how do we, so for example, if I give you a question based on DSA, how do you know which data structure to use? So I think this question can be, um, the answer is very simple, that this comes with um, problem, like for example, if you have solved certain number of questions, you will this comes with intuition. Like for example, if I am give you a question, then you will know which data structure that question is based on, because you will have solved that similar questions in the past, right? So this will come with experience. When you solve more and more questions, that is the time you will realize that okay, this data structure will fit in better. So that will come with maturity, and the more number of questions you solve, it will get easier for you. So whoever has asked this question, I would suggest that you keep on solving questions, and don't forget the approach, don't forget uh, how did you solve that question, so that if I ask you the same question in future, you should be able to do that. And also, instead of, there is again a very famous saying, that instead of mm, uh, analyzing what are the type of questions, you should also analyze what is the pattern that these questions follow. For example, if you're learning a certain topic in let's say DSA, then there will be certain pattern that every question follows, and certain pattern will you will be able to recognize that this pattern is associated with this data structure, right? For example, if there is a data structure called array, or data structure called, let's say, let's take an example of graph. So once you read that question, and you have solved enough number of questions, it will, based on your experience and your problem solving ability which you have developed through practice, you will be able to relate that question very easily to graphs. So this is the level of maturity you should be aiming for, that once you have gone through the problem statement, it should directly come to your mind that okay, this is the data structure which can help me here. You might be wrong, but that intuition or the first thought process is generally the data structure which you can use. So you have to develop that maturity and you have to have that experience of solving, let's say, uh, DSA problems. There is a question: is it right to go with a course first or start solving problems from lead code or GFG platform? Okay, so I would suggest that when you're learning DSA, first learn the basics. And basics you can learn from any course, right? You can search on YouTube, you can take a paid course, you can take a free course, anything, whatever suits you well, you should choose that. And once you are started that course, follow it, right? Don't leave it in between. So start with the basics, learn the theory, learn the fundamentals, and then start problem solving. Then start solving problems from, let's say, GFG or lead code. So this is what I would suggest, that take a course which suits you, which you are able to follow very easily, and then learn the basics, learn the theory, and then go to problem solving. Okay, there is an interesting question, that what do we use in day-to-day life? For example, if I'm working as a software developer, what do we use? So see, we definitely, I would say that we will work with development side. Yeah, we won't use DSA in day-to-day lives, but DSA is something that will improve your problem solving skills. So even if you're developing something, let's say I am developing a web application and I need to solve a problem using that. So you have to use your own mind and you should know how can you solve that problem using programming language, right? So that kind of maturity and that kind of confidence of problem solving using a programming language or using coding is something that you gain with DSA. So that is why DSA is required. We generally, again, whatever you learn in DSA, most probably most of the data structures you will never encounter, right? The chances are very less, but it is definitely suggested that you should be good at it, because problem solving skills can never be, um, you can say, you can never skip that part. You should be a good problem solver even if you are doing development. So I think, does this answer your question? Okay, so there is a question: is there any chance to non-IT students joining companies which are which offer software development roles? Yes, definitely. Again, nowadays I don't think these companies and startups, if you're considering a lot of startups, they don't require you to have a degree, or let's say engineering degree. What they require is you should have skills and you should prove that you are worth that job, right? If you can prove that, then definitely they will hire you. They will not ask you that you should give me certain degree, then only they will hire. That is not the case. So if you are planning to switch, for example, if you are from humanities background and you're planning to switch, then there are certain cases I have seen, even when I teach in AccioJob, there are a lot of people from non-IT background which who have changed their background, right? They have switched to software engineering roles. So definitely you can switch that. Okay, so there's a question: please share your learning experience of DSA. Okay, cool. So I remember I started when I went to college. I didn't know anything about programming. I had never programmed before. I didn't know what C is, what any programming language is, like what do they do, right? I didn't even have CS in my 11th till 12th standard. So I was feeling that I am a beginner. I was very beginner level. So when I went to college, I remember a lot of people already knew what is programming and they had done it some sort of programming in the past. So I started with programming in my second semester, where I had to do a course in my college which involved C language. So I had to do that as a mandatory course. Then after that, after the second semester got over and there was a break, summer break in between. So I remember I took a course. I started with a course which was basically teaching DSA, because I talked to a few of my seniors and everyone told me that once you have to once you if you want to begin with your programming journey, again, the first step is to choose a programming language and learn that, and then once you are comfortable with that programming language, start learning DSA. So in that 2 months, I remember I started with DSA, and during that vacation I almost did half of the course, but the later half, which was left, I completed in during the third semester. So DSA was, I completed the theory till third semester, but I was not that comfortable with problem solving. So what I did was, because I wanted to get comfortable, I started practicing questions regularly. I started giving contests. So what you can do is, nowadays there are a lot of platforms which you can use to build that habit of regular problem solving. So there is Code Chef, there is Lead Code. Again, Lead Code itself has weekly challenges, weekly coding contest, which you can definitely attempt. Right, that is a very good way to practice regularly and build your skills. So I started with that, and in fourth semester I remember because COVID also happened during that time only. So I completed I sorry I practiced regularly, and the number of contests which I give was very high, because again, it everything happened during COVID. So I was free at home, so I used to give a lot of contests, practice regularly, and that is how I got better at DSA. So if you want to practice, or if you want to get better at DSA, I would suggest practice regularly. There is no substitute for practice. So you should practice regularly and try to solve at least a few. You can fix a number of questions. Let's say if you have time, if you have 1 to 2 hours every day, fix that. Okay, every day I will choose 3 questions or 4 questions from lead code and try to solve that. And apart from that, what you can do is, you can also start giving, once you get comfortable, you can also start giving the contests which happen. Because see, contest is something that, again, it will build your problem solving abilities, as well as it is a way you can tell the world that, okay, I know this certain subject. So for example, your rating on these platforms can be a, you can also share these ratings with me, and okay, I will be able to know as an interviewer that you know DSA well, because you have certain ratings on these platforms. So giving contests and practicing regularly is something that can definitely help. Cool. Okay, so let's move to the next slide. So again, this is a meme which a lot of software programmers and software engineers will relate to. So it says, if so basically there is a person, there's a software engineer sitting in front of a computer, and he or she doesn't know why is something not working, right? And after certain changes, let's say you make in code, it works, but again you don't know why is it working. So this is a meme. So why does this happen? Because when your fundamentals are not right, you didn't focus on fundamentals, in that scenario you will encounter the situation that you don't know why is certain thing not working, and even if it is working, you might get confused of how is it working. So if you have that fundamentals right, if you focus on the fundamentals, then you will definitely, you will feel that in certain scenarios you will be able to do better than the other people around you. Just a second. Yeah, sorry. So again, focus on getting the fundamentals right. Don't skip any of the step we have discussed, because especially the first 3 steps, don't skip that. Because if your fundamentals are not right, and even during development, don't directly jump onto building projects. Don't directly jump onto, building fancy projects which might seem interesting and which might seem fancy to other people, but you should know how is it working at the core. You should know how is anything you are using or anything you are building working at the core. So that is what I mean when I say don't skip the fundamentals that are very important. In short term, you might feel that okay, it is better to skip the fundamentals and directly jump onto the advanced things. But in longer run, right, because if you are becoming a software developer or software engineer, in longer run you will realize that fundamentals are the thing which actually will help you throughout your journey. I think there was some controversy, and a lot of people I've seen also say that colleges don't teach which is relevant, the things which are relevant, and colleges actually focus on, or college curriculum actually focuses on CS fundamentals, right? They don't teach you how to build a website, but they teach you all the things which are working at the back end for creating that website. So again, if you are in college and if you have an IT stream, I would say focus on the fundamentals. Don't just skip that part. And if you're not into that IT stream, or if you are someone who is working, then I would suggest don't skip these topics. So these are the computer science fundamentals. At least during your journey, once you are done with development and you are comfortable with DSA as well, don't I would suggest that you at least go through the basics of these topics. Like for example, you should know what is object oriented programming, which is called OOPS, right? You should know the fundamentals of it. Then you should know databases. Again, you should at least know the basics. Don't go into very deep. You can simply again, all of these topics you can watch from YouTube, and don't skip them. So you can choose OOPS, you can choose you can see databases, how does database work, and what are the kinds of databases available. And then very basic, very much basics of operating systems and networks. You don't have to deep dive, but again, fundamentals you should know, because fundamentals is something that you will realize will help you get better at software engineering, as well as become a better software developer. So these are the things that you should never skip. Okay, so there's a question in the chat box. So if a person is good at coding but doesn't have a good project, how to build project? Okay, so see, if you're good at coding, that means I'm assuming you're good at DSA, you're good at problem solving skills, right? So to build a project, you also need to know some development part. So that is was the step 4, that after you have learned DSA, focus on development. Because actually whenever you become a software developer, development is something that you will be doing, right? DSA is, you can say, the fundamental, and actual thing which you will be working on is with development. So for building projects, for uh, building resume and writing projects in the resume, focus on development part. Sir, please explain. DSA with Java is difficult than front end. Yeah, so see, it is not difficult. I wouldn't say that you can compare these two things. But if you are facing difficulties, I would suggest you to go through the theory again. That whatever you have learned in DSA, go to the theory, and once you are done with the theory, start practicing. That again, I'm repeating myself that there is no substitute for practice. DSA is something that you will have to practice and get better at it. You cannot directly say, okay, I will Google something and then I will learn, or I can copy paste some code. That is not going to work. So to get better at DSA, practice is the only solution. So okay, I think there is another question. I'm a fresher, so which domain should I choose? Which will be right for me? So Divyanshu, if you are a beginner and you want to start with development, if that is something you're asking, that which path you should choose, I would suggest you explore for, let's say, if you want to explore web development, just try to Google about it. What will be the things that you will be working on, and try to think what path excites you the most. For example, for me, I think when I develop a website, and the other thing is that I can develop a mobile application. So if, for example, I like developing websites more than mobile applications, then choose that path. So if you are someone who likes to build web applications more than liking the mobile side, so you can choose that. If you are someone who wants to work in the ML domain, ML and data science domain, then choose that. But again, before that, try to do your research. Try to research about everything, that what are the things you will be working on and what are the types of problem you will be solving. So that is how you can try to decide what path to choose. There's a question: how much DSS should you practice? Approximate number of questions. So see, I cannot guarantee or I cannot tell you exact number of questions, but what I have seen is people with who have who are good at DSA have solved around let's say 300 400 DSA questions in general from different platforms, and after that they become they have some experience of problem solving. That is why they can crack interviews. So again, there is no fixed number. It might be different for different people, but 400 300 400 questions is a good number to have. And don't focus on numbers. For example, if someone has solved, let's say out of 300 questions, someone has solved 250 easy questions, only 50 medium questions, 50 medium level questions, then that is not a good number, right? That is not a good indicator. So you should have a mixed bag. For example, out of 300, the ideal situation is you should have solved somewhere around 150 to 200 medium level questions, 30 to 40 hard level questions, and then remaining easy questions. You should focus more on the medium level questions. But again, if you're a complete beginner, start with easy and then go to uh, step by step, go to the medium level. Cool. So what is the step 5, right? So step 5 is simple. Once you're done with development, once you have done the fundamentals, start building projects, because projects are something that you will need to. So any company you sit for, or whenever you have to sit for a placement or anything, you have to show that you know development. And how do you show that? Is by building projects. So if you have built some projects, this is a way for interviewer to know, okay, you know development and you actually know how to implement certain things in real life. So start building projects and don't build something. So basically what people do is they take some code from GitHub or any other platform and copy paste as a project. That is not something which is recommended. Build it yourself. Start building projects which are actually solving some real life problems. So for example, you might want to build a banking application. So what you can do is, if you're a web developer, you can build a website which is for a dummy bank. This is what you can do, right? Where people can log in, people can send some money and receive some money from someone. This is something which you can add in your project. This is going to be a good project if you're, and a good learning experience for you as well. And if you're choosing, let's say, mobile application, so what you can do is you can build an application for a bank. So again, try to solve some real life problem, just not for the sake of doing project, but for the sake of learning. That is what you should aim for. Cool. So we have done, let's say, if you have followed from step 1 to step 6 or step 5. Now what to do? So basically, whenever you are done, whenever you are building projects, start building resume. So again, this is a meme where a person sent out 10 resumes and got 11 interviews. This is how your resume should be, right? It should speak for itself. So in resume, again, I would suggest focus on areas which will make your resume stand out. So if you had, let's say, participated in some contests on Lead Code or any other platform, Code Chef, Code Forces, anywhere, and you can write your ranks. For example, if you participated in Google Kickstart, so what you can do is you can write that this is the rank you got out of these many candidates. So again, the interviewer will be able to judge you based on that. Ki, okay, you know certain kind of, you have that problem solving ability and you have proven yourself by giving these contests. Or what you can do is, you, let's say for example, you built a basic website of bank, that is something you can explain in your resume, that you know how to develop this kind of website, so that it can your resume should stand out from other people. You should have an edge over other people, and focus on that part, that don't try to fill your resume with unnecessary information. So what a lot of people do is they try to fill their resume with um, a lot of information which is not relevant to the job you're applying to. For example, if you love playing guitar, that is not relevant to me as an interviewer or as a recruiter. I don't want to know what you love, right? Or this is not relevant to software engineering. So don't fill it with unnecessary information. Focus on the areas which will make your resume stand out. So this should be the last step, that you focus on how do you start build you should focus on building a good resume and doing or building good projects. And last but not the least, I would say be eager to learn. The ultimate aim should be a good software developer, a good programmer, and not just to get a good job. So once you focus on that, once your aim is to become a good software engineer, then only you will be able to learn constantly. And in software engineering field, there is no programmer or no software engineer which can ever stop learning. If you stop learning, then I think you are not going to be a good programmer, because there are different technologies coming day by day. You have to learn, right? You have to be eager to learn. So, and nowadays programming or code, if you know how to code, that is considered to be a superpower, right? Because you can build your own startups. Anything you need to do has to have some technology. So if you know how to code and if you're a good programmer, there is no one stopping you from doing anything in this world, right? So again, be eager to learn. Don't ever stop learning. Your mindset should not be to just get a job and stop there. You should be learning constantly and learning, enjoying the journey. That is what your aim should be. So I think this is what I had from my end. Yeah. One more thing is start as soon as possible. For example, don't think, okay, I don't have time. So whatever time you have after this session, let's say if you have 1 hour daily, don't procrastinate and delay your start. Start as soon as possible. You don't know, you might not know at what point in time coding will might help you, right? So again, start as soon as possible. Don't procrastinate. And if you need any help, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I can definitely try to answer your doubts. And I would suggest that, again, nowadays, because technology is associated with every field, and it is growing again, and like it is growing day by day, so you should definitely know how to code, at least very basic, right? So don't skip any of the steps. Focus on the fundamentals and be eager to learn, right? This is how you can become a good software engineer. Okay, I'll just answer a few questions from the chat box. We have around 5 to 10 minutes, so I'll try to answer your questions. Hmm. So for Accio job bootcamp, how much Java fundamentals topic should I know? See, I think if even if you're a complete beginner, they will teach you um, from the very beginning. So I don't think there is any prerequisite for taking that course. How many companies come up? So again, nowadays, so the question is how many companies come above 10 LPA? See, nowadays, technology and software engineering jobs or this industry is supposed to be booming, right? So there are a lot of companies, I would say there are a lot of jobs in software. If you are a good programmer, you can definitely feel that there are a lot of jobs which will offer you 10 LPA plus. So again, don't focus on, in the at least in the beginning, don't focus much on how much will you get. You should, again, focus should be on to become a good programmer, and then opportunities will come to you definitely. And these opportunities you will be able to grab very easily if you are good at it. Sir, I'm a fresher and haven't done any internship. Mm, so there's one more question in the chat box. So I think I answered this question, Guru. That the question is DSA with Java is difficult than front end. So this is what I answered. I think it is, you cannot compare these two things. These are again different domains. But if you are feeling that, if you personally feel that DSA is difficult, so practice more and more. That is what I can suggest. That go through the fundamentals again and again till the point you understand it well. Right? Go through the videos, or if you're following some course, go through that, and then once you are comfortable with the fundamentals, start solving problems. So you will definitely get better at DSA. Again, I think you cannot compare these two things, front end and DSA. So if you're feeling that it is difficult, then try to practice more and more questions. Sir, is it important to have various skills? So when you say skills, do you mean development skills? Okay, I think that person is not answering. Cool. So I think if you're asking that question, I think it is related to development. Yes, you need to know development, because as a software developer, that is something that you will be doing. Knowing just a language will not be sufficient. I think if there is any other question, you can write in the chat box. Okay, I think people are spamming. Apart from that, I don't see any new question. Okay, so there's a question: how do you switch from web development to blockchain? See, for this, you need to, what you can do is, again, both of them are different um, domains. So there is, I don't think there is any. Actually, I'm not aware about that. But what you can do is, if you want to become a blockchain developer, what I would suggest is search on YouTube and start with that. So you can, I think, once you Google, once you do your research for that, that how to become a blockchain developer, you will find some good resources and try to follow that, and you can definitely switch from web development to blockchain developer. Cool. Um, so there's a question: I'm comfortable with basic DSA in Java. What will be the sorry, will next 3-4 months sufficient for learning development? So see, if you're comfortable with basic DSA, I would suggest you start with practicing questions, and along with that you can definitely focus on development. And yes, if you consistently work for next 3-4 months, you will be able to do that. Okay, there is one more question: how do you motivate yourself to code when you're unable to get logic or apply it? Right, this is a valid question, and I think everyone who will start with their coding journey will encounter this, that at there will be certain times when you will feel stuck, that there is no other way for you. You will feel that there are no results coming and you are not able to solve problems. So when that happens, I think the best way to deal with it is that if you're stuck on a problem, leave it for, let's say, don't look at it for next 2-3 days, and try to come back at it. Try to come back at the same problem and try to solve it at a later point in time. Right, this is what I think you can do. Or the other thing is, because you are just beginning your journey, I would suggest that if some you encounter some new question, then what you can do is you can try to see its editorial, or try to see the solution and try to learn from that. That is very important. So whenever you start with DSA and whenever you start problem solving, you should also learn. you should not focus on just solving all the questions you encounter, because that is not possible. So once you go through the solution, you will definitely be able to learn and see how was it solved, so that in future if you encounter the same problem or similar question, you will be able to solve that. So I think this is how I myself came up with this or faced this issue. So I would suggest that try to leave it for a few days and come back to that, or see the solution and remember that okay, next time when you see the similar question, you should be able to solve it. um so there's a question, which programming language is better, C or Python? So see, I don't think anyone can answer this question, that which is better, because Python is used for different domains and C programming language is used for different domains. So if you are someone who wants to do ML or data science, then I think Python is something that you should do. Or if you want to do something which is related to operating systems, then C is something you should do. Cool. I think we are almost out of time. So if you have any doubts or anything, you can definitely connect with me on LinkedIn. I can try to answer all your questions there. I'll try my best to answer everything um, which I feel is relevant. I'll try to I'll try my best to basically answer your questions. Right. Okay. One last question. It is something related to work-life balance. No. So see, these companies nowadays focus a lot on work-life balance. So I don't think you will face issues there. But work-life balance actually depends on you. So for example, if you uh, want a good work-life balance, what you can do is you can fix certain number of hours you work, and then after that you can be like, okay, my job is done for today. Whatever work I need to do, I'll start tomorrow. So it depends on you. But yeah, work-life balance actually nowadays a lot of people focus on that. So I don't think that there'll be some issue regarding work-life balance. So for LinkedIn, you can search Parv Budhiraja. Let me just get to the first slide. You can search. This is the spelling, and you can connect with me if you have any doubts. Cool then, everyone. Uh, I hope I answered your questions, and I hope this session helped you. Good night, and see you all later. Good night, everyone. Bye bye.